Welcome to Debt Matters. Um, Imagine turning up the thermostat in your house, but you still have to wear a heavy winter coat inside.
Right, because it's still freezing in the living room.
Exactly. You move the dial from, freezing to slightly less freezing.
Yeah.
Technically, the temperature is higher, and the data shows an upward trend, but your teeth are still chattering, and you are literally still wearing gloves on your own couch.
Which is a pretty perfect way to describe the exact reality for UK small businesses right now.
Yeah, based on the Federation of Small Businesses Q1 2026 Small Business Index, the headline data shows confidence moving upward from -71 to -53.
But the environment is fundamentally cold. I mean, 8 straight quarters of negative confidence means we are looking at a sustained period of baseline pessimism.
Right. It's not a victory lap.
No, not at all. A move to -53 just shows that the sheer panic might have subsided a bit compared to the end of last year. But a negative index score still means more businesses are pessimistic than optimistic. The headline figures kind of try to project a narrative of recovery, but the operational reality on the ground paints a vastly different picture.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to unpack those exact numbers. We are going to look past that top-level improvement and, well, examine the mathematical squeeze happening to operations right now.
Yeah, the day-to-day reality.
Right. We need to look at how a broad macroeconomic cash flow problem morphs rapidly into a highly specific hyperlocal collections problem for your business.
Yeah.
And to understand the current climate, we really have to look at what happened in April.
Right, because April delivered this mandatory wave of cost increases.
Just a wall of expenses.
Exactly. This wasn't a single policy adjustment or, a localized supply chain issue. It was a compounding pile-on of regulatory and operational expenses arriving literally all at once.
All hitting on the same day.
Yes. The cost of just keeping the doors open went up across the board for virtually every sector, and businesses are currently struggling to absorb that impact.
Let's break down the mechanics of those costs, starting with physical premises.
Okay.
Because business rates went up, which immediately changes the math on maintaining a physical storefront or a warehouse.
Oh, absolutely.
It is a cost completely detached from a business's actual revenue performance. You owe it regardless of whether you make a single sale that month.
And then add the rising energy standing charges to that burden.
Ugh, the standing charges.
Yeah, this mechanism is particularly punishing for small operators because a business might actively try to conserve cash by reducing their energy usage, right?
Right, like turning off equipment or limiting operating hours.
Exactly. But the standing charge is the fixed base cost you pay simply to be connected to the grid.
Just to have the wire running to your building.
Right. So when that fixed cost goes up, it totally nullifies those behavioral attempts to save money. The baseline cost just to turn the lights on is higher, regardless of how frugal the operator tries to be.
That is incredibly frustrating. And I understand the labor side of the equation, too. The national living wage increase clearly adds to the monthly payroll burden.
Yeah, that's a direct hit to cash flow.
But how do the compliance changes, like making tax digital, actually drain operating cash in a way that hurts day-to-day operations?
Well, making tax digital forces many smaller operations to completely upgrade their software architecture.
Okay.
It frequently requires migrating from simple legacy accounting methods to modern subscription-based cloud software.
Which means recurring monthly fees.
Exactly. And often, they must hire additional accounting support or consultants to just ensure compliance with the new digital reporting standards.
So they had to pay an expert just to figure out the new rules.
Right. That is cash flowing directly out of the business's reserves just to satisfy a regulatory reporting requirement.
Wow.
It offers zero return on investment in terms of business growth, client acquisition, or product development. It is purely a compliance drain on their operating cash.
And then you add the wider statutory sick pay obligations to those labor costs, and the margins compress even further.
Oh, yeah.
And the business owners themselves are feeling this squeeze personally, right?
Right.
Because changes to the dividend tax mean lower take-home pay for directors.
Yes.
So the people running these companies are managing rising operational costs while their own personal household finances are taking a direct hit.
The compounding effect across all these areas is just severe, and the data highlights how widespread this is. 87% of firms are facing year-on-year cost rises.
87%. That's almost everyone.
Nearly 9 out of 10 businesses are operating with higher expenses than 12 months prior. Furthermore, 26% of businesses are dealing with double-digit jumps in their costs.
The double-digit jump is massive.
It really is. And when they categorize the primary drivers of these pressures, 58% cite taxation,
Okay.
56% cite labor, and 53% point to utilities.
You hear the phrase absorb rising costs constantly in financial reporting.
Oh, all the time.
It's used almost like it is a character trait of a good business. Like, oh, they're strong, they'll absorb the cost.
Right, like a sponge.
Yeah. But let's be real about the mechanics of absorbing costs. Think of it like carrying a backpack.
Okay, I like this.
You are walking along, and every month, someone drops another heavy rock into your bag. A rock for higher standing charges, a rock for the new payroll requirements, a rock for software compliance.
It just keeps getting heavier.
Right. And you can adjust your posture. You can walk a little slower. You can try to, absorb the weight.
Yeah.
But the financial mechanics dictate that eventually the straps are going to snap. The fabric is going to tear. So how are businesses acting when they can literally no longer carry the weight?
Well, the straps snap because the money coming in is dropping precisely while the money going out is rising.
It's hitting from both sides.
Exactly. The backpack gets heavier, but the person carrying it is simultaneously losing muscle mass. The revenue numbers show a stark operational vice grip. 54% of small firms reported their revenues falling over the previous 3 months.
More than half.
Yeah, and only 24% saw an increase.
So more than half of the businesses surveyed are bringing in less cash, while 87% are paying out more. That is the actual mathematical definition of a squeeze.
And looking forward, the pessimism continues. 45% expect revenues to fall further in the coming months.
Wow.
This mathematical squeeze bleeds directly into employment and growth strategies. Businesses are making these defensive structural choices just to survive. 23% of firms have already reduced their staff in the last 3 months.
Nearly a quarter have already been cut.
Yeah. And another 21% are planning further staff reductions.
So a fifth are about to make cuts. Who is actually hiring in this environment?
Almost no one. A mere 8% are planning to recruit or increase headcount.
8%.
Yeah. When you pull back and look at the broader growth expectations, the softness is so apparent. 30% of businesses expect to contract, close, or sell over the next year,
Wow.
while only 22% expect to expand. We literally have a higher proportion of the small business economy preparing to shrink or exit the market altogether than the proportion trying to grow.
To you, the listener, especially if you are managing credit control or running a finance department, here is a practical question.
Yeah, let's connect the dots here.
When a business is trapped in this vice, paying more for utilities, more for taxes, and more for labor, while simultaneously fewer customers are buying their products, what is the very first internal process that breaks down?
Payment behavior breaks down every
Right.
time. That macroeconomic story becomes your local collections problem because businesses start making tactical defensive shifts to hold on to the money they do have.
They start hoarding cash.
Exactly. They weaponize their accounts payable department to protect their dwindling cash reserves.
We see this constantly. A business rarely files for administration out of nowhere.
No, never.
The early warning signs are always behavioral changes in how they interact with their suppliers.
They start stretching payment terms. An invoice due in 30 days gets pushed to 45, then 60 days.
Just quietly moving the goalpost.
Right. They delay responses to your accounts receivable team. Emails go unanswered. Phone calls go directly to voicemail. Perhaps the most frustrating and common tactic right now is raising disputes incredibly late in the billing cycle.
That specific tactic is brutal.
It really is.
A debtor will wait until day 29 of a 30-day payment term to suddenly claim a line item looks incorrect or a delivery was slightly off.
Yep.
They weaponize the dispute resolution process just to hit the reset button on the payment clock.
Because it forces the creditor to spend 2 weeks investigating the claim, checking shipping logs and verifying purchase orders,
Doing all this admin work.
only for the debtor to drag out the subsequent payment for another 30 days after the dispute is finally resolved.
It's exhausting.
And in the most severe cases, the debtor simply goes quiet entirely. The data validates this daily reality for credit professionals. Right now, 69% of small firms are currently affected by late payments.
Almost 7 in 10.
7 out of 10 businesses are essentially acting as involuntary banks for their clients.
Yes, involuntary banks. Because holding on to an unpaid invoice operates like an unofficial forced line of credit.
Exactly.
It is a grim game of musical chairs. If I owe you £10,000 and I delay payment for 60 days, I effectively have a £10,000 interest-free loan sitting in my bank account.
Which you can use for whatever you need.
Right. I use your cash to fund my operations, generate yield, or pay my own staff while you scramble to cover your outgoings.
It's totally unfair.
The music has stopped playing in the economy, and no one wants to be left without a seat, without cash in their bank account. So they simply stop passing the cash around.
And late payment transfers the risk and the cost of capital from the struggling business directly onto the balance sheet of the healthy business. It punishes the suppliers who delivered the goods or services exactly as promised. With 69% of businesses stuck in this environment, the discussion naturally shifts to how we fix the underlying system.
Because businesses cannot function in a permanent state of waiting to be paid.
Hi.
The supply chain eventually breaks.
Right. And there is growing pressure for government intervention. The Federation of Small Businesses is urging ministers to include late payment legislation in the King's speech on May 13th, 2026.
Which is coming up fast.
Yeah. Their message is that economic growth is mathematically impossible to achieve if the government ignores the damage late payments inflict on smaller firms.
You just can't grow if you aren't getting paid.
You cannot build a thriving economy on a foundation of uncollected receivables. They are looking for mandatory reporting requirements and stricter penalties for large corporations that routinely pay smaller suppliers late.
Now, I understand the push for legislative reform, but let's look at the practical reality for the listener.
Okay.
Legislation in the future does not pay your current payroll.
That's true.
Even if the King's speech includes new, strict rules on payment terms, it will take months, if not years, for those rules to become enforceable law.
Oh, absolutely. The gears of government move slowly.
Right. They have to pass through regulatory hurdles and actually impact the daily operations of a small business. You simply cannot wait for the government to fix your cash flow.
No, waiting for policy changes is not a viable collection strategy at all. The immediate takeaway from the current economic data is that strong, proactive credit control is no longer optional.
It's mandatory.
It has transitioned from being a best practice to being a core survival mechanism. Because margins are incredibly tight right now due to those rising April costs and falling revenues we analyzed earlier, a single unpaid invoice from a major client can do severe permanent damage to your operations.
Yeah, it could wipe out your profit for the whole quarter.
Exactly. Most businesses simply do not have the cash buffer to absorb a large client going quiet.
You have to know exactly who owes you what and act swiftly the very moment their payment behavior changes. When an invoice hits day 31, you need an automated, rigorous follow-up process. You cannot assume a late payment is just an administrative oversight in this economic climate.
Credit professionals must implement robust vetting procedures for new clients and constantly monitor the creditworthiness of existing ones.
Just trust that they'll keep paying like they used to.
Exactly. If a historically reliable client starts stretching terms, missing emails, or weaponizing disputes at day 29, you must adjust their credit limits immediately. You have to protect your own operations from their hidden cash flow crisis.
Right. Let's recap the journey we have taken today.
Okay.
We started by looking at a business environment where the top-level confidence data shows a slight upward tick, but the operational reality remains fundamentally frozen.
The winter coat in the living room.
Exactly. A compounding wave of mandatory April costs, driven by taxes, labor, and utilities, has collided directly with falling revenues for more than half of the small business market.
The vice grip.
Yes, the vice grip, which is forcing operations to reduce staff and abandon growth plans in favor of basic survival tactics. The direct consequence of this vice grip is a widespread breakdown in payment behavior,
Right.
affecting nearly 7 in 10 small businesses and turning a macroeconomic squeeze into a daily collections battle for your accounts receivable team.
It's a tough landscape. And, I want to leave you with a final thought to consider regarding the sheer scale of this problem.
Yeah, please.
If stretching terms and delaying payments has become an unofficial survival tactic for struggling firms across the country, how much of the current broader economy is quietly being financed by one small business, simply being forced to wait on an invoice from another?
Wow. It really is a staggering reality to consider. When you put it like that, it's just passing the pain down the line.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this analysis. We will catch you next time on Debt Matters.